It is 12:03. We are live on air on our YouTube channel. This is a Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. Councilman Hellman informed me earlier this week that he would be out of town and unable to attend. All other committee members are present. First, we have a case, a rezone for 315 North Blanchard Street, filed by Dan from State Farm, and I'm not even going to attempt the last name, even though he just told it to me. City Planning Commission did what with this?
Unanimous approval / recommendation for rezoning. I'm pulling it up here.
Would you like me to read the report, Matt? Here. So just generally, the request is on the east side of North Blanchard Street, south of the intersection of Tiffin Avenue. It's zoned R3 small lot residential. To the north and the west, it's zoned C1 local commercial and C2 general commercial. To the east and south, it's zoned R3 small lot residential. The house that was on that parcel was destroyed in a fire in October of 2022. So the property owner to the north, Mr. Majewski, sorry, so he owns the State Farm agency to the north, and he's proposing to rezone it to C1 so that he can expand the parking lot that you can see just north of the home. It'll give him a little bit better maneuverability on his site, and given that it's such a small lot, and with the proposed parking expansion, we were supportive with the request. So it was motioned to approve unanimously. The house is no longer there.
Okay, thank you.
Just, and then at Planning Commission, the applicant stated that they might wait a period of time to allow the ground to settle and such, maybe a year or two, but then the long-term plan is to put parking there to help improve access to his office building.
That's a great location.
And he would.
Hey guys, we have no sound.
Okay.
I'm getting text.
I'll inform IT, but I was just going to say that he would need to apply for a parking lot expansion permit, I believe, with Eric too, when the time comes. So
two questions. No change in curb cuts, correct?
That will be reviewed during City Planning Commission for that little expansion.
Okay. And Dan, is there an intent to combine the lots into one?
Well, that was actually going to be my question.
Yeah.
It's actually very interesting that you brought that up, because I didn't even know that you had to have parking permit to aesthetics. So
Yep.
That was going to be my question, based on the fact that it is two parcels at this point. Would it be combined? I don't know how that.
Yeah, per our zoning code, that'd be part of the requirement, is to have that combined into one parcel once the zoning goes through, the zoning amendment. Yeah, that's per our zoning code.
So, my one question is, I think it's a good use for them, but I know we have requirements on having gravel and stuff down and what things look like. Are they in any district that has requirements?
So right now, because it's going to be temporary and he's going to probably be doing this work towards the end of the year, is that about right, or sooner?
No, at minimum it'll be like over a year from now before I can do anything.
Yeah, so the settling, the gravel's put there in a place. I mean, it happened down in East Main Cross where they tore down the Oxy Law. And there was plans, once it's settled, to do the parking lot there, so that's not that big of an issue with it going to be turned into a paved surface anyways.
And we won't extend the curb cut all the way to the corner, I don't think.
That would be an engineering question, but they may have him move it. It depends on how the layout works out. That'll be discussed
The
there.
other picture kind of shows that. I didn't know if you could do any additional curb cuts because
Yeah.
I don't know how that affects anything. I am not proposing to do anything just because of the fact it didn't look like it needed it. And that lot is so small that it's so close to that alleyway that realistically, it's more for the first entryway that the current staffing parking lot can be closer to where I am on the red box, so that current clients can just come in and park a lot easier. Right now, they kind of have to maneuver around the current staffing that I have that's there around their cars. If they use this
Yeah.
current way it is right now, you can just move right in there.
And those are all site plan questions. I mean,
Yep.
really, the only thing we're talking about is the rezone of the lot. I was just curious, you're right, I shouldn't have even asked the question, but I was curious on the lot combination thing. To me, this is a no-brainer, and I'd make a motion to move to approve the rezone request.
Second.
One question too, do I need to do anything in order to have that combined, or is that
Yeah, you'll need to go to the Hancock County Auditor, and they'll move that parcel into your parcel, and it'll create one parcel number for that lot.
And
So
he's
it's a form,
required-
it's a simple form that you gotta fill out. Might be like $5 to $10 to pay for it to happen, but it's real simple.
a certain amount of period, or is
Real
it-
simple and easy. You can wait until this goes through, or you can do it now. I mean, it's up to
Is it
you.
required of him, though? I mean,
Yeah.
could there be a benefit to him down the road if he decides he wants to
So-
keep it two parcels?
Well,
And that's actually a good question too, because remember, well, the reason I asked that, and that's a very good thought about that, it is in the floodplain.
right.
So if that, my building did a letter of map amendment to take.
So it'll be the same thing for that side of the lot, but whenever you come
It's
through,
separate, so there's no structure on that, which means I wouldn't have to do a letter of map amendment.
I would talk to your,
You don't have a structure
I would
on
talk
it.
to your surveyor that did the elevation certificate and did the LOMA for you, to ask them if you have to redo one for that parcel, but to get it removed, you would. I mean, we would treat that new pavement and everything per flood code anyways, because it still is in the floodplain. The practical approach would be to get a hold of the surveyor, combine it, but then also have them do a LOMA if that part is still out of the floodplain, and just get that submitted to FEMA. Because
It
you'll
might
have,
not matter if you don't have a loan on it. Do you have a loan on that new lot?
Loan on the lot, no.
Yeah, so it should.
yeah, so there's no flood insurance, requirements for,
Just wondered if I combine, because I have it on my building, I have the loan on my building, I didn't know by combining that into one parcel, if that would change.
nope, won't affect it. What FEMA and the flood insurance look at is the structure, it's not the parking lot or the ground.
You
We have a-
don't have to combine it until you construct the parking lot.
Okay.
So if I were in your position, I would just wait until, okay, I'm building my parking lot, I'm submitting the site plan stuff, and I will go to the auditor's office and combine it. So,
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions concerning the motion? Seeing as though there is none, all in favor of approving as requested? Aye.
Aye.
You are good to go, Dan, unless you want to sit around and listen to exciting zoning discussions. Next on the agenda is continued conversations about the zoning code, and for those listening at home, this is since last month when we split off the farm animal discussion from the rest of the zoning code changes. There will be no discussion of farm or animal ordinances at today's meeting. This is simply the other changes to the zoning code that we will be discussing. And I will turn it over to Matt and Jacob to lead us from here.
thank you, Grant. I just want to reiterate, this is not part of any, this meeting is not part of the approval process to making these ordinances law. This is merely a review, a discussion. The idea is at the end of this meeting, if the group agrees, to then start it on the process of becoming part of the city ordinance. Through that process, it'll go through City Planning Commission. It'll come through this board for a recommendation, and then it'll go to City Council. So just wanted to outline where we're at in the process. Since the last time we met, we did a lot of work on the code, getting it. We had 2 different people spend about a week reviewing for commas and misspellings and all that kind of stuff throughout the whole document. To help everyone for review, and we put this on the city website, essentially came up with a list of all changes and the page that they can find it at. So hopefully there's no, before I kind of talked in broader terms and, you know, we brought up the situation of trailers and stuff. I hadn't put that in the main thing. So hopefully this removes any appearance or concerns that we're trying to sneak something through. This is all the changes. So Grant, I don't know, would you like me to just kind of go through each one?
I think I'd first ask if anyone on the committee has questions concerning any of it.
Okay. I guess
So-
I'll open
Yeah.
the floor to any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I guess it all kind of seemed to me with the outline that stuff we had already hashed out in prior meetings, correct? I mean, it's nothing new in that regard, correct?
Correct, yeah. There's, other than if there were changes that were recommended at the last meeting, which I can't remember any that were, there's probably a few small changes that were essentially immaterial
Okay.
to the purpose. But yeah, so there's really nothing new.
And we did have the one open item was some conversation about that you had on the, I think it was on the parking section, and you sent an email with an explanation. But if you want to kind of give details on that, and I'll turn off my mic. I think that was your feedback.
I think the email that I sent, hopefully it was a little bit of clarity. I mean, I sent pictures that corresponded with some issues that we've had in the past. I mean, it's not, there's already a utility trailer parking and residential, so that affects nothing there. It's just more of a commercial where they're allowed to park it. They're still allowed to have it on site, but it's going to be parked more closer to the building or further away from the right of way. It's not restricting them from not allowing them to have a trailer on their property. It's just giving us a tool of enforcement for when those complaints come in to make sure that they're parking them in the proper place in the parking lot.
I guess I'll just comment on that one since I brought it up, and I'll comment on Matt's opening statement as well. I don't think anybody's thinking anybody's doing anything intentional. However, we are changing this entire codified ordinance in one ordinance, which is not something that I can support because there's a lot of changes in there. And going through the original book that you gave us and looking on the current website changes, again, they're not matching up. So the utility trailer discussion was added in there. It's not redlined. It was black put in there. So nobody would have known that was a change other than a citizen contacted me. I don't support that change because I think we're dictating too much on there. If a commercial property owner wants to allow somebody to place a trailer on their property, a business trailer, and they have their agreement and it's not blocking safety measures on the street for anybody, I see no reason for that. You gave your examples, and I think were they all Mad Hatter? I don't know if there was anybody else in that example.
There's been others, but we didn't have pictures of the others.
So you gave me examples of Mad Hatter. Unless I call them and say, okay, did you pay a lease agreement to park your trailer there? Do you rent at this location? Do you own this property? I don't know. I know where they used to be. And I noticed the other day when I drove by, it wasn't a utility trailer, but it was a straight truck with a business parked right up to the sidewalk line. So I have no problem in a residential to keep commercial business and tractor trailers and all of those things out of a residential. But I think we are overstepping our bounds, and that was not redlined in the final on the website unless somebody was looking for it. So I would like that removed, and that would be a motion that I would make, because I don't see any benefit to be controlling business that much.
And just to clarify things, it's not restricting somebody from leasing out a parking spot. It's just putting the use of the parking to saying you can't have it within 30 feet of the right of way, or it has to be within 10 feet of the building. So if they were to lease a parking spot from Grant's Breakfast Barbecue Place, and it wasn't the same thing, but they're putting their trailer in his parking lot, it's just saying that they had to park it closer to the building, or
But it has to be
within 30
owned
feet.
on that property.
no, I
Did
think,
you
and
remove that?
that's the thing, I didn't intend for it to say that it had to be owned by that person. That's residential, so it was kind of moving residential wording over to that section,
So
because,
if we go to page 169.
so if that's in there, we can strike that out, no problem at all. That's amendment, though, that legislators have the ability to do. So,
Well, I mean, that was one of the big things. And then when we talked, when you weren't here, Matt talked about like Walmart and stuff, trying to control those. And I don't know how you control that. That doesn't even make any sense to me.
and that was another thing, like I sent the pictures of Big R, how they always have their trailers parked out right at the right of way. There's always complaints from citizens about that. It's just telling them that would be the instance that there's a big parking lot, but they want to be able to park within 30 feet of those trailers for display.
So the trailers that are for sale, that was what you
This-
referenced in there. So you don't feel that they should be able to park in the parking lot anywhere they want if it's too close to the road? Because it's advertising that we have these for sale.
It's
I don't see
but that's not my, like I said, it's just a content expert in a situation. I'm giving suggestions, and it's up to the council and legislators to amend or approve or will do what they want to do with the code.
That wasn't necessarily the sense that I got. What I kind of took away from it was, we're not telling them they can't, but what we are asking is that they keep said signs out of the right of way or line of sight. Say perhaps at an intersection, for example, there at AJ's Pizza, where there's a street that's used by the college, and Main Street. It could potentially become a safety hazard. And I think that's all we're trying to eliminate. We're not trying to tell them that they can't.
Mhm.
We're just trying to eliminate safety, where instances where safety could become an issue.
Because a lot of these are right on the right of way.
Yeah.
So.
Could it be an issue now at some of those locations? Possibly not. But what happens if it is at a location and I have no tool to say, hey, you can't park there?
If you have a safety concern, we have policies in place that we can get those moved. If somebody's blocking the right-of-way view of traffic, I'm sure that our Findlay Police Department can address that concern. And I think Brian's statement, in my opinion, this is trying to control signage, which is what the original discussion was at the last meeting. And every business that wants to put their name on their trailer, whether they're driving it down the street or they're parking it at a location where they're working, or they're just parking it to advertise, if they have permission and they're not blocking the right of way, it's none of our darn business.
And in some cases, there isn't permission given. We found
Well,
that-
then
yeah,
that's
no.
when it's a civil matter.
Right, and that's what
And that's when they
what they've gone
contact
by.
and say,
Yep.
tow it,
Yep.
right?
They can't really tow it, but
If somebody's
they have to go
trespassing,
through the court system.
well, there's measures they can take
Yeah.
on the civil side. So looking at the Part B, utility trailers, utility trailer or mobile service vehicle must be parked or stored to the rear of the front of the building line of the lot. If it's storing it, if they want to advertise, they can be able to
What's-
put it anywhere on their lot.
Is that on the parking section?
That's number one. Number two, utility trailers and mobile service vehicles must be parked on hard surface. I would agree with that one. I think that's common sense. I don't
Right.
think people usually
Mm-hmm.
do anything. They might be on gravel, they might be on asphalt, they might be on concrete. And then no utility trailer or mobile service vehicle can be parked at the property address if the vehicle is operated by an employee or contractor that does not reside at the residence.
So if we go up to the parking section, go all the way up to accessory structures in
What
that
page
section.
are you on? I'm on 169.
I just want to see if the wording,
Internet version,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
169.
Yep.
So
What-
just for point of clarification, 2 weeks ago, the board asked that I get kind of the final copy to them, which I sent, I think 2 weeks ago, I sent the final polished copy, and we put that on the internet with all the red lines. So just,
But not all the red lines are there, Matt. That's what I'm getting at.
I think that this might have been changed. Because somebody has their mic on. So my original proposal for this wasn't what's in writing, so I don't know if something got changed somehow during all these updates and whatnot. So this is what the residential code, I do believe, says if we scroll up. My proposals for utility trailers on commercial sites alone was meeting more of what we have for mobile signage, which we do have restrictions that it has to be 50 feet from the right of way or 10 feet from the building. So I'm not anywhere. I'm just
this is residential. This is,
Okay.
This only applies to residential districts.
okay. So I think the wording is right there. So that's the exact wording that got copied and pasted down. So I think something along the way happened to where maybe this is something that you want to take a look at later on, or if you want to make amendments or whatever. But our original edits that we did make for the section that's for commercial, so that's already existing in the code. This is residential right here. So those are all the criterias for residential, but they somehow ended up in the criterias for commercial, which me and Matt sat down and we made sure that it said 30 feet from the right of way, 10 feet from the building. Yeah, right there. Yeah. So that's the actual, let's see.
This is the actual item
Yep.
of contention, because this is.
So that was, yeah, that was residential that we were looking at this whole time. So if you scroll down to the commercial, those are the criterias that I've been talking about. So utility trailers parked and stored, they can still be parked and stored on site. They just have to be within 10 feet from the building, 30 feet from right away. Utility trailers must be parked on a paved surface, which you said that's a good idea. And utility trailers, that last one though, I can see where that's an issue that was copied from the residential. That can be amended and struck from that section of the code, because as long as it's meeting the setbacks, I don't think there's an issue of somebody parking a utility trailer at a site, especially if they're doing work. I understand there's contractors all over the area and they want to advertise. No issue with that at all. It's just parking it too close to the right of way has always been the issue over the past 7 years since I've been here with other trailers and utility trailers alone. A lot of times it's when they're not attached to a truck, because some of them, I mean, they're not automobiles. And that's been the complaint by some of the citizens, is that they're taking up 3 or 4 parking spaces and it's not an automobile parking in those spots. Not me, citizens. So that's all it's been based off of, is citizen input throughout the years to the zoning department.
And you have 2 examples that are bringing this forward. 1, Mad Hatter. 2, the mall with them selling their trailers.
And there's been other ones too. I mean, if you go back, I mean, I could probably dig into them, but
Well, I have no problem with number 2 being there. Number 3 needs to be removed, and number 1, I think we're still a little bit in the weeds because some commercial properties may not meet those setbacks.
and that's why so if it's not a 30-foot,
For
that's why we
instance,
say
the old Mad Hatter location, they
Yep.
literally go up to the sidewalk.
Yep. So in those cases, when there's a utility trailer and not an automobile, it's 2 different things. And if you
But
look,
should it be?
it's
You're
it's per
saying
yeah.
if somebody wants to park a straight truck with their business name on it, we don't care where they park. But if you're a trailer and you're
I'm
part.
just thinking trailers in general, even if they had
I know, we're
advertisements on
talking
the side of
utility
it or not.
trailers. I
It's-
would make a motion for this entirety to be removed, because I just think it's redundant. We have civil matters that can handle anybody's concern if they want to complain about something, but if they're not blocking, a right-of-way for safety, I don't think it's worth getting in the weeds about it. So that would be my motion, to remove section F on page 176 regarding utility trailer.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Not like that.
Eric, it doesn't sound like you're crazy about item 3 there.
No, I would definitely strike that one from the code regardless. Now, if you want further discussion about section 1 on that code, to where it meets more favorable parking, to where it's not parked on the right of way. If it's 10 feet, it's 10 feet. Whatever you want to say, I think that could be an adjustment that could be made. It's just when it's parked all the way up to the right of, because we have a lot of old parking lots throughout the city that aren't meeting our 10-foot setback for our zoning code. So if that's an adjustment that you want to make, fine with that, but it's up to you. I'm just here to give my suggestions and input as a witness, I guess you would say.
Eric, would you interpret this, so let's say I have a smaller parking lot. To me, it's 30 feet or within the 10 feet. So if you can't get 30 feet from the right-of-way, most likely you're within 10 feet of the building.
That's typically the case. If you think about Papa John's, they had a mobile sign there one time at the Cervix Center. And similar thing to where it had to be 50 feet or 10 feet. The parking spots were right at the property line, so they were 18 feet right there. So they just moved it back to a parking spot closer to the building, which is 10 feet from the building. And it didn't really impact much of what the mobile sign was trying to display. But that's for the mobile sign section. It's not a utility trailer.
Matt, are you good with striking number 3?
It's not about Matt, it's about this committee.
In terms of your professional recommendation, what are your thoughts?
I would strike number 3. It's more about function than ownership.
Understood.
So it's impossible to enforce, and I don't think there's a need to enforce that.
Okay.
I guess I would make that motion.
Second. Motion and a second to remove point 3 under F,
Yes.
and it's seconded. Questions or comments? All in favor of removing 3, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Strike out number 3.
Can we go back to 113.19? I don't see that one in the final, and that was for withdrawals. Why did we remove that one prior to deadline? 1113.19. 35 maybe? Yeah, well 34/35 because it's not there. It was with 1113.19 was prior to deadline withdrawals. In order to withdraw an application prior to planning commission meeting, it was that whole section. A and B has been removed, and I'm just curious to why. It's not even redlined in there. You went 18 and then you stopped.
I'll have to look at that. So these were all the attorney out of the attorney's edits.
Yeah, and I don't know our attorney. Has our attorney looked at any of this? Or has he commiserized with your attorney out of Toledo?
Our attorney has not looked at this, no.
So 1113.19 has to do with withdrawals on applications. Should there be a process to withdrawing your application?
It- Yeah, when you're,
I see C.
so is it red or is it redlined? That's,
If you look up at page 29, you'll see a list of the chapters. You'll see a list of the chapters. It's just not in the book.
yeah, so I,
So look, yeah, there's 113.19 withdrawals, but it just doesn't appear. So there's an omission, so put it back in. Easy.
Yeah. And then 1113.20 we have it redlined on here of removing things, but it wasn't even in the original regarding planning commission actions. So A through C are redlined on this current version, wasn't in the original book version we were discussing. I guess I'm just curious. First, it wasn't in there, then it must have got put in there, then it's redlined on this current version. Is it necessary or not necessary? Because I feel like it wasn't discussed, obviously, if it wasn't in our original book that we were discussing.
Matt, the way I kind of read it is that perhaps those items become redundant when we mention may exercise all powers identified in Chapter 713 of the Ohio Revised Code. Is that correct?
I mean, that was a big theme of his changes. He wanted to reference the Ohio Revised Code rather than listing a bunch of items. The Ohio Revised Code gets changed, then you're misaligned with the Ohio Revised Code.
Understood.
But we can be more and not less than Ohio Revised Code, right? So are these A, Bs, and Cs, were they more restrictive or less restrictive is why we're removing them?
So, as I was trying to explain, a lot of the things that, for example, these items he wanted us to put into a policy document but not have in the code. City Council has a kind of rules and regulations policy document. Planning Commission does not. It has a lot of their things specifically listed in the ordinance. He wanted to remove a lot of some of these procedural things and have them in a policy document rather than in the code. And then just reference the ORC.
Because ORC would be amended, but it would still be, Ohio Revised Code would be amended, but it would still be Chapter 713. So that way we kind of cover all bases.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have that city planning commission document being created in conjunction with this?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something that we could, is it like it's being created now, or is it, do you have a draft copy
so
of it?
we've marked off what sections he wanted to put in the policy document.
Okay.
So
Is that something that council would approve? I would think so.
I don't think so. I think Planning Commission probably would.
Okay.
Well, that takes us to 1113.24 for staff. And he had marked in there under his notes, I would be inclined to either delete this or define the staff as Hancock Regional Planning Director or designee. On here, we have it engineer and so forth, but we did not list mayor, and I thought mayor ran they do the appointing and everything. Shouldn't the mayor be listed? Or are you following what your attorney wants to recommend? I guess I'm looking for an answer on that.
Sure. I wouldn't consider members of the Planning Commission board who vote as staff. Myself, Jake, Eric, the fire department, engineer, or designees would be the staff that present to the actual board.
So his recommendation was to only have you on there or a designee. So remove city engineer fire department, and planning commission clerk?
No, I believe we added designee. So so
I'm on the online reading the attorney's note,
yes.
and he said he would be inclined to either delete this or define the staff as only Hancock Regional Planning Director or designee. And on our version that we're looking at, we have city engineer, planning director, fire department, and commission clerk, which is why I questioned mayor, because commission clerk, I don't know. I guess I'm focusing
that's
on the
me.
board. I guess but those are all the people that sit on that board,
So-
minus the appointees that she appoints, right?
So that serve on the board?
When I think of planning commission, the mayor appoints 5 people, right?
No.
Am I thinking the wrong committee? Is that what you're
No, it's outlined in the Ohio Revised Code.
Mm-hmm.
So it's her, it's the safety service director, and then it's 3 residents of the city of Findlay.
Okay, I know
So
it's 5. I read it in here that it
Yeah,
was
so
5.
that's the board. And then this is referring to staff.
So the mayor's not staff.
No, the staff presents to the board. So about these comments are probably 6 to 7 months old. I can't get rid of them.
Okay.
So we have sat down with the attorney and went through all these bullet points. We've had conversations, and then, the conversation on this, he asked the question, we had dialogue back and forth, and then we made changes as appropriate. The conversation on this was potentially, Jeff, what are your concerns? This. I'm like, that's not our concern. He's like, well, then just keep it. So what we don't have are the following dialogue from his comments. I've tried to get them removed, and I can't get them out of there. That's a technical issue. Because I don't think they help clarify anything. They're rather old notes from almost a year ago.
Okay, so we like it how it is then. That's
Yeah.
all I wanted. Okay. And then 1113.28 goes back to Grant's statement a few minutes ago, rules and procedure, parts A and B. So you guys are working on those rules of procedure?
Yeah, there were certain parts where especially these redlined ones, Robert's rules of order, he's like, that should be in the policy. He's like, I don't want to lose a case because we didn't follow page 48 of Robert's rules of order and did something out of, the policy is, yes, we will to the best of our ability follow Robert's rules of order, but it's not the law. And nowhere else in the Findlay's code, all code, does it reference Robert's rules of order. So a lot of these things we're moving to the policy part.
When you see a jump in numbers, do you need to correct those for the final draft?
Some of them, yes.
So you got 1113.13, or not 13.33, and 34 is nowhere anything, and it goes to 35. So
One, 3.
33.33.
Okay.
I mean, eventually you take a non-redlined copy and you look and you adjust you go through
Yeah.
and find these
Well, I thought
types
that's what
of
we were
things.
doing, so I marked things.
Um,
And then
I mean, for notational items like that, just give your list to HRPC, Matt or Jake offline. That I don't think there's any that doesn't warrant committee discussion to fix obvious spelling errors or numbering errors. we're kind of more, looking more content oriented.
Does nobody have comments other than me? Is that what we're at?
Brian, Jim, comments on the changes?
It all looked pretty much what we had already talked about in terms of the changes that were made, so I'm good with it.
Yeah, most of our work over the last month was working on really formatting and things that we aren't changing. Whole chapters, going through the whole document, because we will be repealing and replacing. And that work continues, and as Grant mentioned, upon adoption, and probably before we take it to Planning Commission next month, some of the numbering and little things, but we're trying to get it to the point where there's zero mistakes in the document to be adopted.
On the wind turbine, I don't know what page it was on, but I think it really needs to be defined that we're not gonna allow for wind or solar farms, but if they wanna have it on their property, they can. I know there was discussion that we had that most of the time, those turbines and so forth are not usually on the same parcel. So I thought we were trying to define that better, and I didn't see anything new there.
Okay, let me get there.
I don't know what page it was on.
144. If we're talking chapter 1156. You can just go up to the page number and click on that, type 144. See how easy that is?
That was better. I apologize. I've gone back and forth. I will, if you like, I definitely will add a sentence, a statement in the intent. So Holly, your concern, I just want to hear your concern again.
When we discussed before, I think everybody was, at least the impression I got in committee, is that we were not in favor of a wind farm or solar farms. So making sure that was defined clearly, but then we got into discussion about these wind or solar oftentimes are not on the same parcel as the business. And then there was a lot of gray area discussion on how to handle that and
Yeah.
who it goes to. Then there was a discussion that the solar and wind companies usually own their thing and then they lease it to the business and then they resell their energy out on their own. And we got into the weeds on a lot.
Sure.
But I think there needs to be some clear definition so we don't have room for interpretation.
So I think my response to that conversation is under usage. The power generated by the wind turbine shall primarily serve a single user at a single location. No wind turbine shall be constructed or continue to operate if it does not serve a single user at a single location. At one point, I had in here, the wind turbine shall be located within 2,000 feet of the building that it's serving. We can definitely add a part C to the usage, and we could put something back in like that. I feel like this code prevents, but definitely within the intent, I will add a statement, you know, I would like to add a statement that says, you know, the purpose of this is to wind turbines for a single use. In no way shall this be interpreted to allowing large-scale wind or solar facilities, that kind of thing.
Without trying to predict what happens with alternative energy provisions in the future. So this isn't me trying to predict, but could you see but I could see a scenario where you would have one wind turbine supplying like a co-op of 2 to 3 buildings. And this would restrict that because it's one. And part of me says if and when that comes, we can look to amend the code.
Well, if one comes we adopt this and one comes next year, my recommendation to them would be to seek a variance.
And then
And-
it's, yeah, okay.
So
Yep.
I would rather err on being a little too restrictive on these than letting them let the horse get out of the barn, per se. So if an office building,
There will be no
and-
discussion of barnyard animals at
Yes.
this. So I would appreciate a different analogy.
so if 3 smaller owners, a commercial and a light industrial, and they all wanted to share one wind turbine, that meets the intent, but it doesn't meet the code. So I'd say get a variance, and we would be supportive of that variance.
Can you go down 2 pages, page 146 for 1156.10 permitted zoning districts? What are we saying in I'm not clearly understanding what
Okay, so I think for clarification, I'd like to add accessory solar energy systems are permitted in all districts. Principal solar energy systems, which is a lot with nothing on it and just solar, potentially, are only permitted in C2, I1, I2. And so I think adding accessory solar energy systems permitted in all districts is the piece of information that clears up this statement.
What is the square footage that you reference in 1 and 2 in paragraph B? 1750 to 40,000 square feet. Is that the size of the lot?
Yes.
Say it. Say that it's the size of the lot.
Let me get to my notes here so I can.
C2 again. C2 is not South Main. C2 is Tiffin Avenue.
That's general business.
C2 is Tiffin Avenue. Trent Avenue. I can never keep them straight.
Yes.
One is local. C2 is like, big commercial, yeah.
No. So I mean, I guess one,
C2.
building
Large.
mounted, I see no issue, but ground mounted, maybe that needs to be a variance.
Well, so Holly and I are talking about the C2 and
Because I would say ground mounted, right? And you can put
well, on the ground mounted, I've seen parking lots where they cover the parking lot with solar. So let's say that the could if the mall wanted to do covered parking with solar,
Which like Arizona does.
yeah,
Yeah.
in an Arizona format, is that would you consider that building mounted because they're going to create a structure and put
That would be considered the ground mount. That'd be conditional use.
okay.
So that'd go to City Planning Commission for approval.
Oh, it does say conditional use right there. Fine. So that would need the variance to do any of the
That
ground.
would be the regular Planning Commission. so it wouldn't need a variance. It would just go to them to get approval of the condition.
What's the difference between condition and variance for me?
Condition is something that may be allowed per code, but it has to get approvals. Variance is something deviating from our zoning code. So setbacks,
Drive-through parking.
drive-through, yeah.
So I guess I just said to Grant, building mounted, I don't see an issue with solar, but it could be, but I was looking at C2 and trying to remember C1 to C2. But ground mounted, I guess I would consider that sometimes as tacky as tall signs. So yeah.
ground mounted is basically what we have over the water, the wastewater. That's
True.
ground mounted. Houses are all building mounted.
And some businesses are building
Yeah.
mounted,
Mhm.
which I think is easy, yes.
So we went with ground mounted in any district as a conditional use, meaning they have to come to planning commission. Planning commission gets to see exactly where they're putting it, and have a say on that. So our thought was building mounted, that's somewhat controlled. It's a roof, it's et cetera. Ground mounted, it could be in front of my house. It could be in weird places potentially.
Is the solar at the high school permitted? There's a single ground mounted panel on the south side of the high school. Probably the south side.
With this, it would be a conditional use.
South side of, it's probably the south
Yeah.
side of Millstream.
Yeah, I've walked past
Technically.
that the other day.
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday, actually.
So
trying
as
to
it's
get it
written, ground mounted is a conditional use. It would be approved, yes.
And the high school is a what zone?
R1. Or so accessories permitted in all districts.
Got it. Okay, so in essence, under paragraph A here, A2, it's ground mounted, it's conditional use in all zoning districts.
Yeah,
So
I'm
okay,
adding
got it.
accessory solar systems,
Yeah.
all districts, permitted in all districts. And then for the medium and large scale, I'm going to add a descriptor to the square footage.
A non-content question. The reason we're having to retype this whole thing is because the last document was so chaotic that it was unmanageable. Is this now in a format that once adopted, it can be amended without having to go through this process, without Stopar's secretary having to retype the whole dang thing?
Yeah. So previously, we couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. But yes, so this is in a much better place.
So then,
And the other one was, a Word file from 2008, 2006.
I don't know how you created this red line copy, because it's probably not truly a red line copy. It's probably different font colors, I'm guessing.
Correct.
It would be usually I would appreciate if it's technically possible from here on out seeing two versions of the code, the final version without anything crossed out, just the final black and white version, so then these numbering issues become more easily seen. And then in addition to that, the red line copy. For me personally, I only need to see if you're handing out paper versions, you only hand out a paper version of the final draft, black and white, no edits. And then once adopted, you in essence save the document adopted, remove and then red line copies are from that point forward type of thing. So
If I'm understanding correctly,
but
I'll provide two copies, one as if adopted,
yeah,
and one red
red
line
line.
showing the changes.
and for me it's always electronic. I'm not trying to kill more trees here in the process. It's just for ease of So go back to your initial statement about process from here, because we're simply a sounding board at this point in time. The next step at whatever time it happens is are you going to present it? Are we presenting as legislation to then get it to city planning, or are we going to go to a city planning for their input
So
without legislation?
let's say you guys are like, yeah, we're generally in favor of this. Let's move forward. I will submit a letter to city council requesting an amendment to the zoning code, and that'll be accompanied. It'll be it'll be to repeal and replace with Exhibit A, which will be the red line in the original. City council will refer that to planning commission. At planning commission, who has not seen this, they're aware. I've discussed with them in general terms, but at planning commission, we'll go through each item, look at it, and they will make a recommendation. And then at noon of that same day, I'll come here. If there's not a million changes to be made, come here, present it to you as if you've not seen it, or to whatever extent you want to look at it. And then this body will vote to make a recommendation. Then it'll go to city council. It'll have its 3 readings. And before the 3rd reading will be an official public hearing. And then after that, if it's approved, it'll go into effect 30 days later. And then we'll send this to Walter Drain, and they will publish it and codify it on their official website.
So I think it's reasonable to assume that city planning might take 2 months to get through this.
It is reasonable to think that they might break it into 2 parts.
Yeah, based on the level of detail and their caseload. If their caseload is like today, they'd get a lot of time on it. Yeah, I'm personally in favor of us moving into that standpoint. I think we're going to continue to find, as Holly pointed out, just with sections that are missing and stuff and things, we're going to continue to find issues. But from a general standpoint, looking at the code at the major sections that were changed, really just the additions and changes that you see on page, I think it's page 2, that we have a new A1 that we're the innovation district is new, the PUD is in, and PMUD is out, and the alternative energy sections. There seems to be an agreement, a majority on this council or on this committee with those changes. And so with that,
I have one more question. They added in the downtown improvement district into this document. Why? I don't remember what page it's on, but I know I saw it the other night. It was about 20 pages were added in for the downtown improvement district.
So so you're not working from the code as it is today.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it wasn't red line, it was just added. The whole section was added.
Sure, that's already in the code.
It's already in the book, we just didn't see it.
It's so, the genesis is we were really focused on the things we're changing. And then really the last month, I took a lot of time looking at the things we're not changing. And then there were sections that were left out that we weren't paying attention to. They weren't a focus. We weren't planning on changing them. So if you go to Walter Drain right now, 1138, I believe, and 1139 are the downtown design review district. So
not the downtown Findlay improvement district, the downtown design.
Yeah, design review that passed a couple of years ago.
yeah, so 1138 downtown design review regulations and 1139, those have been in for 4 or 5 years. They just were not copied into that version because that version is not an exact copy of what it is today, for better or worse. So this copy is 60% better in that it, you know, we went through this copy. I had Walter Drain open, going bit by bit, making sure we're not missing anything, or, you know, making sure it looks exactly like today's code, but for the changes that we're making. Does that, so 1138 and 1139 are not new. They were just left out because we weren't really working on those sections.
So I believe it is worth moving this process forward. I want to have City Planning Commission start getting their 2 cents worth, and it doesn't stop us from continuing to review, and we'll have another chance at. There's another place in the process for us to give input on this. As with any legislation, once it's at council, we can give input. So I'm gonna, my motion for the committee report is that we will recommend that Hancock Regional Planning start the legislative process to move these zoning code changes forward by sending a letter to City Council announcing this, starting the process in essence. We have a motion and a second discussion on the motion.
I would still like to see them separated out, because like you said, the major sections, I think it would be easier for everybody to fully address instead of looking at an entire book that's black and red, and some of the black didn't get made red and some of the red didn't get made black, so we don't even know what we're looking at in some cases. I would have no problem with your motion if we separated out the new additions as separate ordinances. Other than that, I don't see a problem.
Other questions or comments? Hearing those, there's none. All in favor of the recommendation that HRPC initiates the process to adopt these changes, say aye. And aye. And those opposed, same
Nay.
sign. Okay. And I don't believe we have any other business before the board. With that, we will call this meeting to a close. 1:06. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need to come pick up some honey for that cough. This stupid cough started yesterday. It needs to go away.